Grace Talks is Thursday. Another day, another Thursday. Great to be alive. Great to be with you today. So thankful that you would stop by and think enough of us to download the podcast. Also want to give a shout out to those who have been listening for however long this thing has been going, 3 years. And been faithful and been a part of our audience. Again, today we're doing this live video cast. So we also got it on audio. So if you like to experience video, we have that on our Facebook page as well and on YouTube. And we're so glad that you are watching or listening, whatever way you're watching and listening. We do have a special guest. And man, I really love to talk to authors and people that are writing books. Last week, talked to Pastor Phil Valdez on his book, The Power of Thank You. Week before that, we talked to Christ for the Nations CFO director, Golan Lindsay. We actually did that from Christ for the Nations headquarters in Dallas, and that was really cool. And today we have another guest, and I've seen this young man grow up, and actually, well, not grow up all the way, but I've seen him grow up from a young teenager to now a real man. And I want to introduce him today because I think this is going to be a really fun interview, and this is going to be really cool. So our guest today, ladies and gentlemen, is my friend Brandon Gosselin. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing great, Derek. Thanks for having me on, brother. Appreciate it.
Do you hear the crowd going, wow, man?
How about that?
Calm down. How are you, Brandon?
Man, I'm doing good. Every day is a blessing, every day.
Every day is a blessing. That's exactly right. And I'm fascinated by you, and ladies and gentlemen, you'll find out just in a moment why I'm fascinated by this young man and all the things that he's been able to do. I think we met when you were about 16 or 15. How old were you? Do you remember? It's quite some time ago.
Right about that age, yeah, 15, 16.
Yeah. And so you were going to our groups. You grew up, what town did you grow up in Oklahoma?
Burlington, Oklahoma.
Burlington, Oklahoma. How far was that from where we were? We were in Tonkawa.
I think it's about hour and a half, 2 hours.
Hour and a half, 2 hours.
Depending how fast you drive.
Yeah, so hopefully you weren't driving that fast, but you would come down to some of our youth services, and that's kind of
Yeah.
how we got acquainted. Well, you wrote a book. You wrote a book.
Man.
And here it is right here. It's My Path to the Presidency, an action plan to realize your aspirations. This is really cool. I've been diving into this. I don't know if y'all got to see that. I've been diving into it the last couple of weeks, and it's really cool how you wrote this book. Basically, what you have done is you've taken examples, quotes, stories, anecdotes from people that are inspirational or famous or whatever the case is, and then you've connected that with some of the your life examples, and there's action plans in the book so people that are writing or reading the book can follow along and kind of list out and map out their dreams. Okay. The first question is, how did you come up with the idea and what inspired this book? And the second question is, are you really going to run for president in 2032?
Yeah, first question first, man. I tell you what, when I was in high school, we had to read so many books per semester, and I was a guy that hated reading. I still hate reading and writing today. But Mrs. Turney, who was my English teacher, she was always getting on to me because she was always telling me that my book had to be, bare minimum 120 pages. The wording couldn't be too big, and there couldn't be too many pictures. So when I was writing this book, I'm thinking, look, I'm writing a book that I was going to read in high school and that I would read today. So they got to have some pretty decent size words in there, the letters and whatnot. It's got to be straightforward. It's got to be simple, short chapters. I mean, each chapter I think runs 5 to 7 pages long.
Yeah.
So something really easy is because I'm not going to write a book that I'm not going to read myself. So that's kind of how we kind of started off on it. But during the pandemic, man, I was looking back at some of my past speaking engagements and some of my, the director friends, like presidents of universities and whatnot, who I've spoken at these universities and these conferences and these high schools. And the directors or whoever may be and some of the students came up, said, hey, where can we buy your book? And I didn't have an answer, Pastor D. So I was like, well, heck. I guess, in the pandemic, I didn't have too much going on. Like nobody did. So I didn't have too much of an excuse. So I sat down and for the past, 2 or 3 years, I've been kind of imagining what it would look like, kind of topics we'd cover and stuff like that. So it took me about a week to just I sat down at the church I go here in Phoenix, actually CCB. I'm one of the group leaders there for the high school students. But I just sat down there for like 7 hours to 12 hours a day, and I just wrote it out for a straight week.
Mm.
And I wrote the outline, I wrote down each chapter and stuff like that. And that was the easy part. The editing part and the lengthy part, Pastor D, was the editing.
Yeah,
And
I bet.
Marion actually was one of my editors because she
Yeah.
got like a 36 on her ACT. So I'm like, who am I going to ask? So I asked Marion to help me. She helped me a lot with great feedback. So I appreciate you guys and your time for that. But yeah, that was it, man. I mean, I felt like enough people were interested in my story. They're interested in some of the things I've had to say on stage, and they said, "Hey, let's put it in the book format." So that's kind of what we did, because I realized that there's a lot of people that have incredible things they want to do in life, but sometimes we don't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
And like whenever I started, I didn't know where to start either. I mean, all I did growing up was, we had farming and oil in Northwest Oklahoma. There's not much around that. And I'm in tech.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in artificial intelligence right now. Completely opposite sides of
Yeah.
the spectrum. So what I did is I took what I've learned from some of my incredible mentors, some of the things I've learned from school, some things I've learned in the School of Hard Knocks, and put it in a very simple form for a reader who's even a third grader
Yeah.
can pick this up and start writing their
Yeah.
stuff down. And even if you're seven, like my grandpa, it was like the biggest humbling thing I've ever seen in my life. I was visiting my grandpa in Oklahoma City about last week. It was actually, I was visiting my grandpa, and he said, "Brandon, check this out. Come here, come here." Like, this guy, he's like the grandpa from Up, the balloons.
Yeah.
Literally my grandpa, and mix that with Winnie the Pooh, and like you have my grandpa. And he's like, "Brandon, come check this out." I said, "Cool, cool. What is it? What is it?" He showed me his book, and he actually filled it out, and I
Wow.
like that. That touched my heart so much. That was such an honor to have my grandpa, who's he's just an incredible human being in person, and does such amazing work, like in the nonprofit world, and like in the retired veterans world of things, just helping people around the community and veterans and whatnot. So it's really big, humbling honor to see that as
Yeah.
well.
Well, that's the first question. And I will say, I
Yeah.
love that about your book, because there is a principle that I think is very important to write the vision. It's very important
Mhm.
that we make the vision plain. And in your book gives us an idea not only to write, but be specific and really
Mhm.
to begin to bring our thoughts right before us, and
Yeah.
really to make them clear. Now, the second question is, are you really going to run for president? That's the question. Is this a real deal, or is this kind of some hyperbole? Is this a real thing?
So one of the chapters, I don't have the book in front of me right now, or I would tell you which chapter it was, but there's a chapter in there that talks about accountability buddies. And I learned that term at church camp whenever I was in junior high. An accountability buddy is, someone or a group of people to keep you accountable for what you're doing, what you're aspiring to be, whether it's, trying to eat well, or trying to start a business and like executing your daily deals, or to have a stronger faith, whatever it may be, to have those accountability buddies around you to help you achieve what you're trying to achieve. So the reason why I titled it Path to the Presidency is to initiate the idea of accountability buddies, and that I want people to keep me accountable. But that's not the thesis. That's not my main goal in life. Um, my main goal in life is actually comes from a quote by JFK Jr., who's the President JFK's son, and it's
Mhm.
actually the theme of the last chapter and the thesis that I like to base the book off of. And JFK Jr. says, enough people tell me that I'm going to be a great person, but I'd much rather be a good person.
Mm.
And I'm sure you know this, but JFK Jr., being the son of a president of the United States, spent his entire life amongst the most affluent, powerful people in the entire world. And he said, pardon my French here, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but he's like, a lot of these people have done amazingly great things, but at the end of the day, they suck.
Yeah.
They are horrible people. He
Mhm.
said, we can all, essentially, he was saying that we can all aspire to do these amazing things, and like whatever the success may mean to you. And that's one of the chapters, is defining what success is to you in the book. But whenever we're achieving these great things in life, are we focusing on being a good person?
Mm.
Because if we're not focusing on being a good person, the journey's not worth it. So if through being and aspiring to be a good person, if the presidency comes about that, that'd be awesome. but that's not my main focus in life. I don't think that should be the focus of anyone's life, is to try to achieve a certain, to degree, or a certain, spectrum, whatever it may be. I think your focus should be just be a good person. And if through that, you should be able to achieve what you want in life.
One thing I really like about the book is you glean from people that have been public figures, obviously like JFK Jr. I love reading about him because there's a guy in my church right now, and JFK Jr., they did this thing in Africa where they stayed in tents, and he literally stayed in a tent for 3 months with JFK Jr. Just 3 months. He stayed in a tent with him in Africa.
That's cool.
Oh, man, I love just asking him questions about what's that like. But
yeah.
So you talk about aspirations and what the goal is in life, and certainly many people thought that JFK Jr. certainly before he died that was going to be his goal in life, was to be president of the United States again, and so aspirations and how you become such a focused person. As we get to that journey in our conversation, there was something that happened to you when you were a young man that really became the basis, or became the foundation, the launching pad for this book and the stories that you glean from in the book. Something happened to you when you were a teenager that has affected, or maybe not defined, but it's been a part of your life, and it's a part of your incredible story and incredible testimony. Why don't you tell us what happened?
Well, I appreciate that, and it's definitely probably one of the biggest blessings I received. Growing up in a one-bedroom house, a family of six, very, very humble beginnings. I knew the importance of family, and I learned the importance of community, because in Burlington, Oklahoma, it's a bit like Mayberry from the old Andy Griffith Show. Just incredible community. I was learning the importance of family and community. And I think that's what really propelled me past what you're discussing here. And this was when I was a young man. It actually was 9 days after I graduated from Burlington High School in 2013. I was blessed to be one of the top 10 basketball players in the state of Oklahoma for Class B. I was, valedictorian of my class. I mean, president of this, captain of that. You could call it Mr. High School, but things really switched.
Extremely well liked. I mean, extremely well liked. I have to add that in there. I mean, you just were a great kid. Seriously.
Man, you're too kind, man. That's why I like you. Affirmation. It's another chapter in the book. But yeah, it was. I was really, really blessed with incredible family, community, teachers, friends. And 9 days after I graduated high school, I was with my friends, and we were kind of celebrating, graduating high school, going off to college. And one thing to know about my friends at Burlington at the time is we were known as the Bible thumpers. So we weren't partying, we weren't drinking. Our ideas of fun were playing basketball, camping out, and riding ATVs, four-wheelers. And that night, on May 25th, 2013, that's exactly what we were doing. And we were on our way back from playing basketball at an old abandoned basketball court. And as we're driving, I've got this honking, huge, brand new four-wheeler that one of the underclassmen brought with them. And of course, I'm the upperclassman. I'm driving this. I don't care if it's his family's, right? I just graduated. Are you kidding me? So I'm driving the bad boy going 55 miles an hour.
And wasn't my brother-in-law with you? Harrison there?
Harrison was with us, man.
Yeah.
He was instrumental in making sure that I did not die, in fact.
Wow.
So he's a heck of a guy.
He's a heck of a guy.
How's he doing, by the way?
He's married. He's doing well. I keep asking him, is he having any kids? So I try not to push that on him, but I'm always wondered about that. But yeah, he's doing well.
Yeah, your kids need some cousins.
That's right.
But yeah, so we're going on this four-wheeler 45 or 55 miles an hour. Got two of my friends from high school in the back with me, and 11:30 at night. Now, we're a bunch of farm boys, of course, in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. We're not wearing, too much protective gear. Don't have a helmet on. I'm wearing a bro tank and some basketball shorts. And that's literally all the protection that I got while driving this ATV. So going down the four-wheeler, 11:30 at night. It's a summer night, so it's nice breeze coming out. It's warm. You can see, the beautiful stars and the moon in the sky. And of course, this was where the oil boom was going on, so you have the flare pipes every now and then. But you really couldn't see beyond the little dinky four-wheeler headlight that was, guiding our way down the blacktop. And out of nowhere, pops this deer. And out of all things, I never thought my life would be changed by a deer, but
Mm.
it was. Oh,
Mm.
my dear. So what happened was I collided with this deer head on. And the two friends on the back, they went over on the side mostly, and they landed mostly in the grass. So they were decently okay. They had some scrapes and some bruises and stuff, but I got the worst of it. And I tell them I the reason why I got the worst of it is because they pushed me over the front of the handlebars whenever they went off to the side, which is why I think I got the worst of the deal. But I go over the front of the handlebars and I land directly on my face. Now we're going again 55 miles an hour at this point. I land on my face right here where I bust my left eye wide open and I almost lost my left eye. At this
Wow.
point, I'm laying in the middle of the road. You have one of my friends yelling up and down, screaming from pain. Harrison just saw what happened, so he stops his four-wheeler, he turns around, and one of the guys comes over and he realizes a couple things. One, that I have blood just pouring out of the side of my face, and two, that I was not moving or breathing. And he screams at the top of his lungs, guys, I think that Brandon's dead. Luckily, he was not a certified doctor, so I am not dead.
That's
So that's
right. That's
awesome.
right. Yeah. Well,
But
we would
go ahead.
probably be getting a lot of downloads if you were dead and we were talking right now. But I'm
Yeah,
glad
that
you're
would be
not.
something else. Yeah,
That
me
would
too.
be. I mean, we would go viral, but that it didn't happen. Thank God.
Oh man. But yeah, that's what happened. I was metaflighted. I don't know pr- words are tough for me. All right. So I went to Wichita Hospital. Eventually got there. I was in a 3-day drug-induced coma. I ended up spending about a month total in the hospital. And essentially, whenever I woke up and started to come through and realize what was happening, my doctors essentially said that, Brandon, your life is completely changed forever and things are not going to go back to normal. Things are
Mm.
completely different. They said that you're at about a third grade mental capacity.
Mm.
And whenever I started to like do some physical therapy and stuff like that, I realized I couldn't even walk. I couldn't even stand in place without someone holding me up. Again, I went from this, one of the top athletes to now I can't even walk. I went from valedictorian to third grade mental capacity. So I went from Mr. High School, and in a matter of seconds, what seemed to me, to Mr. Hopeless.
Wow.
And that was a big change.
Well, the good thing about the gospel and the good thing about this story, without going to the ending, is that you weren't hopeless, and that there is such a position and such a place for hope, not just for you, but for those who are listening. And that's
Absolutely.
what basically the book's foundation is. And so you had this very traumatic experience. You could have died. You were in a coma for 3 days. They gave you little to no chance to really live a normal life, whether that's mentally or physically. And we're going to talk about kind of the things that you accomplished along the way. But what are some things that sustained you in that period? I remember getting a text, I think it was late at night, about your situation from Harrison and Marion's mom that
Hmm.
said, "Can you pray? This accident happened. Harrison was there. It was really, really scary." And I remember obviously praying. And I'm wondering
Thank
what
you.
sustains a person that goes through that kind of experience. How did you not just write a book later, go to college later,
Hmm.
run for president later, but how did you get from that period or through those weeks, those months directly after that situation happened?
Yeah, absolutely. First, just having a foundation, not only in a great family and an amazing community, but a foundation in faith. Because when you're at your lowest of your lows, and I've experienced lows ever since that point, not
Mm.
just that hasn't been my only low, but when you're in those lows and you want to give up and you don't want to move on, and you're just like, this life's too much, your faith. Like
Yeah,
I tell people in
comes
the book,
real.
I say I don't like for me, I want people to believe in their faith and have 100% conviction. Don't be lukewarm in your
Yeah,
faith. I said I'm a strong Christian and I have a strong faith. But whatever your faith is, just believe it and
yeah.
know why you believe it. Don't be second guessing yourself. Find people who can like mentor you. Like sometimes I remember in high school especially where I'd ask you for some spiritual advice, and some like how to pray properly, and stuff like that. So like first off, just having a strong base in your faith and me, my relationship with God, like it was good. I'm not gonna lie, I was a decent Christian at that point,
Yeah.
but we all have room to
Yeah.
grow, and I've grown, and I've lost sight since then, and right now I'm at a really good place where, a majority of my day, in the Bible. You'll probably be able to know exactly where this is in the Bible. It says pray without ceasing.
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying I pray 24 hours a day, but I pray a lot of the day, because I realize that if I want to move forward in this life, I want to accomplish, half the things that I feel like the Lord's laid on my heart. I have to have the guidance and the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, and that can only come through, being in prayer and reading the Word.
That's right. And that's Ephesians, by the way. And that text
Yeah, it
is, I
is.
know a lot of people think that might be like this impossible goal, but
Yeah.
it's really talking about the community. Really, there should be churches, there should communities that be praying without ceasing. We can't do that, obviously. I'm doing a podcast with you right now, having a conversation, so we're not praying. And that's God's just talking about the community of Christ, and that's what I believe you experience, especially
Absolutely.
in the hardships of our times, because there is a place that we have to get to where our faith is our own faith and not my mom's faith and not just the preacher's
Absolutely.
faith, that you come to a reality or an understanding of who God is, and he encounters you and he becomes a real person to you. You think that happened in that period?
Oh, absolutely. Because I grew up, where my mom was dragging me to church, all the way from grade school to whenever I graduated. And I don't know, like like whenever I was there, I had a fun time. I loved learning the word and stuff. Like just getting up in the mornings on a Sunday, I was like, "Come on, mom!" But she would drag me to church every morning. So I mean, like most children and most students who are like that, that's kind of how it is. Where it's not quite your faith just yet. It was my faith a little bit, but mainly it was, a big influence was coming from my mom. But like when you're put in situations where it's fight or flight, that's where your faith can really be
That's right.
defined. So
Yeah.
I consider it a blessing to have that opportunity, where I went through that accident to where I could really truly find my own faith, and really build on that faith.
What I like about this book is it's, when you, especially in the political climate that we're in today, immediately when you hear words like president or you hear words like policy or whatever the case is, socialism, Marxism, whatever the case is, it oftentimes becomes polarized and it makes you, ugh.
Absolutely.
This book, I really am enjoying, and I'm still getting into it, but I'm enjoying the fact that it's not a political book. I mean, it's not about policies, it's not about regulations, it's not about any of those things. And I do believe that Brandon probably has a lot of thoughts and insights on some of those things. He interned and some. You interned at the White House too, didn't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was
So
a humbling opportunity.
we have to talk about that maybe in a little bit. But the book is not political. It's not even a theological book. It's really philosophical in this way, that there are some principles that just work. And I believe those principles are found in the Bible, but
Absolutely.
you really do a good job of kind of connecting thoughts from leaders and then putting them into reasonable and understandable ways that we can really focus on making our goals work. So the reason I say that is because anybody can pick up this book and get their thoughts in order and get their goals, know what their goals are. Was that something that you did purposely, just trying to be as practical as you can? You said something about you wanted third graders to be able to read and do the book.
Absolutely. One of the reasons, of when I was structuring of how to present this book, was of course, I do a lot of motivational speaking across the nation and whatnot, from high schools, churches to colleges, leadership camps and conferences. And what I learned just talking to a lot of students and even some adults, like some business partners and some like potential business partners I've had in the past, is sometimes they just don't believe that they themselves, they can't see themselves in a Nelson Mandela's shoes, or Steve Jobs' shoes, or an Oprah Winfrey shoes, or Michael Jordan's shoes. They can't see themselves. And for me, that's tough. Because we all have these abilities, and actually one of the quotes that's, I would say, a side thesis in the book, is one of the cores I try to live my life by. And I try to live my life by three quotes. The first one was the JFK Jr., and the second one is, by Steve Jobs. And this quote I actually came across whenever I was released from the hospital, laying in my bed. in Burlington, Oklahoma, going through everything that's going on in my mind. I was supposed to do this, this, and this, and now I'm down here. I'm supposed to, postpone academic endeavors to go to college, blah, blah, blah. And like, I was down. And I was trying to find some motivation, inspiration, or something. So I'm scrolling through Facebook and Google and trying to find these these inspirational quotes, these clips, whatever it may be. And I came across something by Steve Jobs, and essentially says that when you realize that the people who are changing our world, the people that are influencing our society every single day, are in fact no smarter than you, then you will realize that you can do just the same. Now, Pastor D, this was in a moment where I was just refreshed out of the hospital, so my mental capacity wasn't quite there. But I do remember in Mrs. Turner's English class that you included me, and it includes every single person in this world who's watching and listening to this podcast, that you include you, that God has put in us his power. And it's up to us if we want to accept that power and really relinquish the power that he's given us. So whenever I saw that and I really pondered on that, I made a decision that night. I said, you know what, I'm going to go to University of Oklahoma at where I'm currently at mentally and physically. And I said, I don't care if I fail. If I fail, great. I'm not going to say that I gave up. I'm not going to say that I gave in. And what I did in structuring this book is I wanted to be able for the average reader, so any reader, whether you're a third grader, whether you're high school, or whether you're in your elderly years like my grandpa, I wanted you to see yourself in these incredible people that have done these amazing things that a lot of these quotes are by. And the way that I saw myself doing that is have these incredible people who have done amazing things take a simpleton like me and try to relate my stories to them so people could see through that connection, that they can see themselves in that person. That person, whether, Oprah Winfrey, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, whatever it may be, they can see themselves do those amazingly great things as well. So that was one of the foundations whenever I was creating this book, is I wanted people to see in themselves how incredibly powerful that you are, and that you can do absolutely amazing things. And the only person that's holding you back isn't society. It's not, friends, and it's not your community. It's not your past. It's you. At the end of the day, you are holding yourself back. And if you realize that you have the power of potential of having the power of Christ in you, if you accept him as your Lord and Savior, you can do some amazing things.
Yeah, I think that's something that I'm always trying to hit people on, especially young people, is, the devil doesn't have to cut off your arms to stop you from laying hands on the sick or feeding the homeless or doing something. The devil doesn't have to make you have a bad accident on a four-wheeler to stop you from doing the things of God. The greatest weapon that the devil has is his lies. And the only person that can stop you from doing what God has called you to do is you. And so when we realize the potentiality that God has placed in us, Jesus says, greater work shall you do because I go to the Father. So that's unlimited potentiality in the believer. And so what the enemy tries to do is he tries to silence us or stop us in our mind. And so no matter what your limitations may be, you're not limited by your limitations if greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. And so we're going to come back. And I really want to talk about your chapter, The Thief in the Night. And I just want to talk about some other things as we go forward, because I think you're a incredible, powerful inspiration. And also what I really like about you too is you're digging into history and you're reading people. And I think that's fantastic. So we're going to come back just a minute. Of course, this is Grace Talks. We'll be back with Brother Brandon Gosselin in just a second. Because Jesus is the Word, I've always felt the best way to spend our devotion time with the Lord is in the Word, meditating on the Word, reading the Scripture over and over. But I've never been a big journaler, never been a big writer, until I found Daily Kairos. It's really helped me be very intentional with the Word of God, really focused, taking the Word of God, reading the Word of God, and then practicing the principles in the devotion. First, you take a Scripture. Then you take 3 gratitudes or 3 things that you're thankful for. You write them down. Then you pray into that verse, taking that verse and praying into it. I love that, and writing that down as well. And then saying, this is my intention for the day. This is what I'm going to do. Every day has a quote, and then you write down what you're learning from that particular verse. And you come back to the verse later and then talk about what you reflected on throughout the day. It's a 13-week journal. It is really, really awesome, and it really helps your particular prayer life. To purchase the Daily Kairos Journal, the link is below. And if you go to their site and type in Derrick, you get 15% off. Listen, this has really been a blessing for me, and I believe it's a blessing for you. So click in the link below and also type in Derrick, and you'll get a 15% off discount. I think that's pretty cool. Here I am. Grace Talks. We are back. My friend Brandon. Brandon is smart, man. You see this guy? I'd vote for him for president. He's smart. And he is, man. And he's really weaving together certain principles and certain thoughts in a very in a very philosophical kind of way, just bringing these ideas and also encouraging us to write them down. Again, write the vision, make it plain upon tables. They will run that hear it. I mean, if you have a goal, and I believe that's one of the reasons that Habakkuk tells us to write the vision, is so that we can also keep ourselves accountable to it. People, they will run that, see it. Other people will see the vision, and now it's accountable to us. It makes us accountable for the vision and so forth. So write it down. Absolutely. And so you're doing these things. You have a chapter in your book called The Thief in the Night. And certainly that's a play on words, I'm thinking. It's a play on words from the biblical idea that Jesus would turn as a thief in the night. But there's also a biblical idea that the enemy, Satan, is a thief. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And you talk about a quote from Oprah Winfrey here, and which is a quote you agree with her. There's probably some people in this audience that don't like her. There's probably some people in this audience that do love her. But this quote is very interesting that says, be thankful for what you have. You'll end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never, ever have enough. That is truth. Why? Because your focus is on what you don't have. And I believe that's one reason why Jesus talks about the idea that if you're faithful with the little, then I'll make you ruler of much. I mean, you were faithful. You were considering, maybe you had a little, but God gave you more because you were entrusted and faithful with that little that you had. Now, in this chapter, you talk about one of the results from your accident, and one of those results is the TBI. Yeah. And that is the traumatic brain injury that you had sustained. Now, I know that they're a bit of a different things, but they are connected. We live in an age right now that is mental health. I mean, we're always thinking about mental health in some way or another. At least it's put in our forefront more than it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago even. But we're thinking about how to make our mental health better and so forth. Now, because of this accident, because of the traumatic brain injury that you sustained, you were having suicidal thoughts. Could you talk about that and also talk about how you were able to press through and break forth out of those thoughts?
Absolutely. Just to give some background on for those who are not, medical students and didn't know what TBI was until they had to do research and were told. But a TBI, traumatic brain injury, is when you have something hit your head, and it's so great that actually, like, something along the lines of possibly a blood vessel burst in your brain. For me, that's what happened. A blood vessel had burst in my brain whenever I came into contact with the concrete that night.
And they're thinking that this. I don't want to take away from what happened to you, but the reason I know about traumatic brain injury, I would have never known about it, but they're starting to really talk about boxers and NFL players that have sustained heavy head injuries over the years. Junior Seau was one of them that committed suicide, and they pointed back to his brain, all of the brain swelling, and had a brain of a, 80-year-old man or whatever the case is that they said he had. And so this is something that is become prominent to our understanding, and it's something that you sustained through the accident.
Yeah, TBIs are not just limited to hitting the ground at 55 miles an hour. Where football players, this happens to, in boxers, like you said, this happens to a lot of people. Accidents, like car accidents, it happens a lot. But for me, my traumatic brain injury specifically is where a blood vessel had burst in my brain, and it was right by my basal ganglia. Now, I didn't know what basal ganglia. I thought maybe that's something like oregano or something you put in your spaghetti to make it taste better. But basal ganglia is actually
That's pretty
the
good.
part the part of the brain that controls four main things in your life. It controls your voluntary movement, your cognitive capacity, your learning capability, and your memory. So it controls the four main things in your life. And for me, that's what it did. It wrecked everything. So I had learned that I essentially had a new brain at this point. I had to relearn how to learn, think, and memorize to adapt to my new brain. I had to get, counseling. I had to get, people to help me understand, like tutors. I had to get tutors to help me understand the course material and whatnot, to help me understand things differently, because I had to think differently than I had before previously with my brain. But getting back to the TBI and what it did in the chapter The Thief of the Night is a common side effect of traumatic brain injuries and, like, concussions and stuff like that can be emotional instability. And for me, my second semester at the University of Oklahoma is when it was really hitting really well for me. I was to the point, as the readers can read, where I did have suicidal thoughts, and I had a letter that I wrote, and they can read more about that. But yeah, emotional instability is a thing that is more common than people like to think it is. And we try to act cool, and like whenever we hear mental health, we always like shun it away and stuff, like, oh, no, don't talk about that. But the thing is, especially after the coming on the back end of this pandemic, emotional instability, rates of depression, anxiety are all-time highs right now. So we need to make it comfortable for people to talk about how going to a psychiatrist or going to a counselor is good. It is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely good for you, because
Yeah.
we have to look at it like this. The brain is a part of your body who's also, I would consider it, a muscle. And what
Yeah.
do athletes do to train to get better with their muscles? They train them. It's no different than LeBron James, who spends $1 million a year on his body to eat the best, to make sure that he's in physical shape, to do all these things to train his muscles, and get coaches to help him improve his muscles to get better at his game and his sport. He may not be as good as Jordan, though. But
That's
anyways,
exactly right.
don't watch Space Jam 2. That was rough. It
I
was
heard it was
rough.
better than people thought it was going to be.
No, it was way worse
Okay.
on my end. I was watching
Okay.
my niece and nephews, and they're like, "Uncle B Dog, do we have to finish this?"
Oh,
And they're like
goodness.
7 and 5 years old. Anyways, um, getting back to what was I talking about? Because the memory thing's coming into play.
We're talking about the traumatic brain injury
Oh yeah.
and what happened to you. Yeah.
Oh, what happened to me? That's right. Thanks for reminding me. That always helps.
Yep.
Um, Sometimes you have these brain farts. You know how it is.
Yeah.
So we
Oh, I
were
know how
we
it
were,
is.
yeah, especially with 3 kids distracting you all the
Yeah,
time.
they are a brain fart.
Oh goodness. So with this traumatic brain injury, what we have to, or not just traumatic brain injury, but with anxiety and depression and emotional instability, we have to address it just like
Yeah.
a professional athlete addresses their own, whenever they get injured, they have to get coaching, they have to go through training, they have to do recovery. That's no different than if you were trying to improve your mental health. Go
Mm.
to a counselor, go to a psychiatrist, because as they're becoming elite athletes, getting trained by their coaches and doing their workouts, you too can become essentially a great athlete with your brain and your emotions and everything that's going on up here with your thoughts.
Mm.
So I encourage, counseling if you need it. Find mentors who can help you go through things spiritually. Like, find a spiritual mentor. Pastor D is an amazing one of those. So like, what I recommend to people is, if you think you need counseling or seeing a psychiatrist, absolutely, seek it out. And I realized, doing some more research and that kind of stuff, it's expensive. I mean, counselors are expensive. You're looking at, hundreds of dollars an hour for like them, or psychiatrists and stuff like that. And even the apps that are out there these days, they're expensive. You're spending, $60 a week just to have like these services to help you become more mentally strong. So it's a little side note that we have. I'm actually working with one of our teams, one of our companies, where we're developing an app through artificial intelligence to help with this process of losing a loved one, and how to therapeutically go about doing that in a healthy way. So we're very excited about that. We have some great interest from people who have created the algorithm behind how you and I can FaceTime. That's one of our interested parties. But anyways, going back to the mental health side of things, it's super important to really focus on it. One of the main components that I learned was actually A friend recommended me to listen to this podcast, and it had the idea and the concept of self-compassion and what self-compassion is, and essentially realizing that you're not the only one going through something, and there's probably millions of other people that are going through what you're going through. So don't feel alone. Know that you aren't the only one going through this. Even if it seems like the most traumatic or the most outlandish thing
Mm-hmm.
that you're going through, you're not alone.
Yep.
And to really understand that it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay there. You have to acknowledge the emotions you're in, but you cannot stay in those emotions. And the way to not do that is to first have self-compassion, but the second is to go seek help. Whether it's a spiritual counselor, whether it's a counselor or a psychiatrist, maybe it's just a good friend who's really good at talking you through things. Whatever it may be, you cannot stay in those negative emotions.
This is so good because even Christians that are maybe watching this or listening to this right now, there is a kind of a church stigma about mental health or counseling. Like we almost think that
Yeah.
you don't have enough faith if you struggle. It's a demon. Get it prayed out or something. And so
Yeah,
we
just
don't.
pray through it.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
just
exactly.
pray through it and don't worry about it. And so we miss some of those elements of really getting the counseling because it's stigmatized. But you just said something that I think is quite powerful, and it's another biblical principle, as most of these are, and it's found in First Peter chapter 5, and Peter says that to those who are writing, and I'll read it really fast here, but I think it's so good. First Peter chapter 5, it says this. It talks about the attacks of the enemy. It says, stay alert, watch out. Your adversary, the devil, goes around, prowls like a roaring lion, seeking or searching for someone to devour. Stand up against him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kind of suffering are being laid upon your brothers and sisters throughout the world. And it's that idea, that you are not alone. And even if you're going through something today and you're looking at Brandon and thinking, well, man, he must be a special person to come out of these things. Just the fact that God has brought him through all of these things in his life means that God is no respecter of a person, and he can bring you through as well. And he's good to bring you through.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
You mentioned a second ago just about in your book, and I love the name of this chapter, see your future, be your future. See your future, be your future. And this is a Ty Webb quote. And in this, you get really transparent. And I mean transparent because you're talking about a parent. And so you talk about your father in this and growing up, how he was growing up. But you understood also, or you learned, that just as you're growing and maturing, your father was as well. Can you tell us about that chapter?
Absolutely. Yeah. So see your future, be your future was something my dad always said growing up. I had no idea where he got it from, but there was this one time, and you can read this in the book, but we were sitting down in his, in his man cave. I don't know. I was probably in my teens at this point. And we were watching Caddyshack. That's where this quote's from. And Ty Webb, the character or the actor for the character in this, he says a line, see your future, be your future. I look at my dad and I go, that's it. What? That's where you got that from? He said, where do you think they got it from? Acting like he's the one that said it first. But yeah. One of the things is we put a lot, a lot of negativity on our parents. And I did not have the most perfect parents in the whole world. And no one does. We all have parents who may have done wrong things to us or for us or about us, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, we can't allow that to define our relationship. Yes, it will have some bearance on us, but we have to show them grace.
Yeah.
We have to show them grace just like God shows us grace. And what we have to do is to understand that we don't know what they were going through at the time. We don't know their complete background. We don't know the mental health and problems that they were going through. We don't know the emotional disaster that they may have been in. They don't know the stress that they were in or currently in. We don't know. So we can't go ahead and assume, oh, you're a horrible person because you treat me like this. The fact of the matter is, put yourself in their shoes. How would you react if you were going through all of the tragedies they've been through and are going through right now? So for me, I had to take a perspective. Yeah, my dad was, a crappy person growing up. He was a father that always made sure that the kids were taken care of. But sometimes that wasn't in the most polite ways, and sometimes, he did some things that weren't favorable to us kids and to my mom. But at the end of the day, I had to realize that he also was going through a lot of stuff. And I
Mm.
didn't realize this in the moment, but looking back and kind of like seeing through, how he was making sure there was food on the table for all six of us, in our family. He'd work on Christmas just to make sure that we were able to, have food for for that day and stuff like. So we just sometimes just take a perspective of like, you know what, they did what they did, and it may not be fair. You may not think it's fair, and it may not be right, but show them the grace that God shows us, because we don't know what they were going through. We don't know their entire past. We don't know the emotional, stuff they've gone through, or the physical, abuse they may have gone through. We don't know that. So really just give them the benefit of the doubt and say, you know what? I'm not happy that that happened growing up, but I am glad that it's made me who I am
Yeah.
today.
Well, I'm going to quote you here for a minute. I think this is so good. Are there negative things that I've learned from my father? Yes. Did his parenting influence the man that I am today and teach me to set goals? Absolutely. As we grow and mature, it is critical to understand that our upbringing, both negative and positive, it says never sunk in the negative. Cherish the positive. Make the most of your relationships now before it is too late. That's good.
Absolutely, because we have a finite time on this earth, and we can choose to live in the negative side of things, or we can cherish the positives. And it's been really cool because as I've shown that maturity in myself, I have also seen a maturity growth in my father. I'm not saying that I'm the direct correlation for seeing his maturity, but I have seen a maturity and growth in him. And I think that is because as a child of his and his other children having that ability to grow and say, you know what, Dad, we forgive you, and we still are choosing to love you, I think that spoke volumes to him. Whether I don't know if he realizes it or not, I don't know if that's direct cause or not, but I think that does have some type of impact. So if you do have a poor relationship with your parents and it's not where you want it to be, show them grace and show them love. It's not going to be easy, and of course, you make sure that you set healthy boundaries. And I recommend a book called Boundaries to help you like kind of navigate that world. But you just the silver lining.
That's good. I'm gonna list off and maybe get some thoughts. I'll list off three kind of chapter titles that I really love the chapter titles. Preparing to fail. You quote Benjamin Franklin. He says by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. So why do we have to prepare to fail? I mean, I thought we were always going to be successes and life was going to be just nothing but rainbows and butterflies.
Yeah, I wish, man. Golly, my failure to success rate, I probably for every one win I have, I probably have 98 fails. I'll be honest, it's a numbers game at this point. I just got to keep on going. There's a point where you just get tired of losing. You're just like, oh, I lost. Time to go to the next one. But yeah, you can't just go about life without having a plan and a direction. I mean, you can, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong against that. But if you want to like release the full potential that God has planned for you, really start to strategize and plan your day. There's a story I mentioned in there, and it's an interview style, and it's Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, and the interview is asking them, what's some of the most valuable things to you guys? Of course, these guys are worth billions and billions of dollars, and they said our most valuable things, besides family, of course, is time and reputation. Reputation you can build for 40 years, and in a second, it's completely gone. And they said time, because time is finite, and you never get it back.
Mm.
So they said, well, how do you spend your time? And Bill Gates was like, well, he's like, I got this. Every second of my day is planned out. I'm running $1 billion corporation. I got to be, efficient. And they looked at Buffett and said, well, you're probably the same thing. Of course, this is a Nebraska boy from Omaha, and he pulls out his little, he's 70 years old, I believe, at this time, pulls out his little notebook and tosses the calendar to the interviewer, and they open it up to that week and the next week, and he flips, and he's like, there's two things on here, but you like, aren't you worth like billions and billions of dollars? Like, how do you only have two things on here? Don't you have things to do? And he says, the most valuable thing that I can do is think, strategize, and plan. So for 70% of my day, that's what I'm doing. And I'm not saying we all have to go to this extreme of spending 70% of your day thinking, strategizing, planning, but it does show the importance of taking some time out of your day to plan, to think, and to contemplate what you're doing and if it's a good strategy. And in the book and the action plans, we kind of help you walk through of how to do that as well.
Another chapter, educate yourself, which is a big deal. Something I think is incredibly important. That one, you can be cute and you can be saved, but don't you dare be dumb. Is kind of that, if I had a chapter, that's what I'd name it.
Oh.
I tell my Marion, I'm going to tell our girls that they can be black, they can be white, they can be tall, they can be short, they can be this, they can be that, but they cannot be dumb. So anyway, the educate yourself. I think that's a really good when you quote Malcolm X when he says education is the passport to our future. For tomorrow belongs to the people who prepared for it today. So I think that's such a good idea. Is not only to prepare for today through thinking through things, but going back and looking at things that have worked. And I say this, and you've heard this on the show several times, but if we're going to deal with things like injustices, or we're going to deal with anything, whether it's economic or whatever the thing is, we need to look back at our history and see what has worked throughout history and see why it didn't work and what didn't work and all of these things, so we can build forward and prepare forward correctly. So in that, when you talk about educating yourself, you're a master's degree, you're a master, right? You've educated yourself. And so how can we do that, or what's you deem important about that chapter?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are different types of ways to educate yourself. First, there's formal education, where I got my undergrad, got my BBA, I got my from Freed Hardeman University, where I finished up, spent a year and a half of that BBA at the University of Oklahoma. Then went on to get my MBA at Florida Atlantic University, and then I'm actually right now I'm getting my doctorate in strategic leadership from it's the Harvard of online universities, I would say. But it's Liberty University. I'm getting my doctorate in strategic leadership. So there's that formal side of education, and there's a lot of emphasis and pressure to get that. For me, I don't think that's the most valuable side of education. I think the most valuable side of education is self-education.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Informal education, where you can get educated. Was that?
There's no doubt. There's no question. I agree with that. Yeah.
Are you there?
Read a book. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, read a book. Exactly. So, like, informal education could be as simple as go watch a YouTube video that
Yeah.
has educational material to it. I mean, there's a lot of free stuff out there. There's no reason why anyone in this entire United States specifically, but in the world, I would expand it to,
Yes.
cannot live within their means or above their means. Like there are plenty of opportunities to make money.
You
to
hit that
educated
right
for
on the
free.
head. I mean, we say so many wrong things where we can do a 15-second Google search to find out the right answer. We have information at our fingertips, and we are so satisfied with being ignorant.
That is absolutely true. And one of the things is if you don't know and you want to know, yes, you can do the Google search. That does help. I love Google search. It helps me a lot. But there's also the type of informal education. It's through mentorship.
Yeah.
I love mentorship, and I first came across this idea of mentorship through one of my he's now one of my business partners, but Ty Lopez. I'm an investor, one of his investment groups. But he says to mentor up and to get mentors. And it's so crucial. It's been so crucial to my success. I have spiritual mentors. I have business mentors. I have, mental mentors. I have personal mentors. I have, preparing for a family mentor. I have an incredible amount of mentors because I realize, first off, I don't know what I don't know, right? And I want to make sure that I can best prepare myself not only for my future family, but also for my investors. But more importantly, I want to prepare myself to do what God wants me to do in this life. And I feel that can come through mentorship and learning. Wisdom is learning from other people's mistakes so you don't have to do them yourself. So that's what I try to do is try to really encourage people getting mentors to really help with that side of things. Because education, yes, it can come through formal education, but informal education like YouTube videos or getting yourself a mentor can really, really help. I mean, I spent thousands of dollars in college, and like the extra kickback money I got from scholarships in college wasn't used to party because I'm not a partier, but it was used to like travel across the country to meet with a guy that I saw on a YouTube video saying, hey, I want 20 minutes, or I would appreciate 20 minutes of your time. I'm going to travel across the country. Can I take you to dinner? Or to take you to lunch or coffee, whatever it may be. And they said, well, you're going to travel that far? Absolutely, I'll make time for that. So just really that's the type of stuff that it's unique. People don't do it, but it definitely stands out and it shows initiative, and people love when they see initiative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, I'm going to take one more break, and then I want to come back and ask you just about your time being an intern at the White House, and maybe any other things that you want to add that maybe we forgot about as we went through the book. We didn't even cover it all, but just some of these ideas. This is a good read. Something good, again, if you're looking for something to get your children, here it is right here. Something if you want to get your children, it really helps them be practical and work through it and really get their thoughts in order. And so we'll come back in just a minute with Brother Brandon on Grace Talks. That's right, Eden's daddy. What a pleasure it is. Thank you guys for listening. Grace Talks. It's always fun again to be back on a Thursday again. Thank you so much. We got so much going on, so many opportunities for you to listen to the show, so many interviews. If you want to catch up, you can do that. You can just search anywhere that you get your podcast for Grace Talks. You'll find it. Also, if you want to go back, we have a podcast just dedicated to prayer, helping you get your prayer life strengthened. It's called Grace Prayers. We just pray scriptures over each other, and that one's really fun. You can find that also every place that you can find Grace Talks. And then we have another podcast, Healing the Brokenhearted Child, that has just been going exceptionally well. We have 5 episodes, and I'm just talking to counselors and people that are really good at dealing with trauma, particularly children who have experienced extreme trauma. That's called Healing the Brokenhearted Child. You can go back and listen to those anytime as well. And one more, I know they're just coming out at you, but we will be doing one called For Us Dad. And I've been doing these For Us Dads videos that is just kind of these 2-minute, 3-minute inspirational aimed or video streams or video casts. I don't know what you call them. That just encourage dads, young dads, and just wanting to encourage them and build them up. And we're going to start a new podcast that also just focuses on those same premises and has a longer form conversation about those. Brandon, I have to know. I've not been, and I'm going to one day. It's my goal to take my children to Washington, and we're going to do all the touristy things, because I think that America is a revelation. I really do. Doesn't mean that we're perfect. Doesn't mean that we have all things in order, but we are a revelation and an experiment that is an absolute miracle, because we're the first ones to put in our documents, our founding documents, or in our bylaws, if you will, that our rights was not given to us by a man or by a government, but our rights were given to us by God himself. And so that was written by imperfect men, but that sure is a perfect reach that we can reach for. Now, tell me about your experience in the White House. Now, when did you intern in the White House?
I was in the summer of 2017, so I just graduated, getting my BBA at Freed-Hardeman University, and I did some training shortly after that with the Zig Ziglar Corporation, and then I headed over to the White House and I interned there.
Now, before we talk about this, because I think this is very important too. Again, your book is not a book that is a partisan book. It's not even, I would say, it's not even political in that regard. You just stick to philosophical, inspirational, and at times biblical principles that really can that that is for helping people achieve their goals. And in your book, you even have a place where you talk about how Barack Obama is a big inspiration in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say, let me do my math here, 2002, oh, that's Trump. Well, that's Trump guy. And you are inspired by Barack. You're inspired
Mm-hmm.
by, you mentioned Benjamin Franklin and other
Mm-hmm.
people. And now you're smarter than me. And you said, well, Benjamin Franklin, he wasn't a president, but actually, he wasn't a president under the Constitution. No, I'm wrong. It's not Benjamin Franklin. I'm thinking about John Hancock. I think I'm wrong. So anyway, I won't even go down that regard. But one of the founders of our country, that's what I'm getting at. So you talk about this in a very bipartisan, non-tribal way. So back to that. I think I had to say that. What are the things that inspire you about Barack, number one, and then tell me about your experiences at the White House in 2017?
Yeah, I think that one, President Obama, he's got incredible charisma. He can lead a stage like no one's business. I think he's got incredible charisma. But two, he's a great family man. Just like watching him, how important his daughters are to him, and just
The
seeing
only
that
person that has
leadership.
better charisma than Barack Obama, in my opinion, and I could be wrong,
Pasty?
is Michelle.
Ooh, good one. That's a good one.
Seriously, he is, especially when he has got his speeches together. That woman is better than him, and you talk about charisma, and I mean she is exceptional. So yeah. Anyway, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. Like that's the thing. One of the things that frustrates me a little bit in today's society is the idea of cancel culture. Is that if you don't believe with somebody on just one thing, they're completely null and void, or that organization is completely null and void. And it's like, first off, let's do some homework. Let's educate ourselves about that person or about that scenario that's going on. And the second, don't just assume that person is absolutely bad because you disagree with them on one thing. Like there are plenty of things that President Obama and I don't agree on.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine. Like we need to come to the understanding that you don't have to agree on everything. And that's the beauty of our the intentions of our government anyways, is that you may have differences, but there are some things that you can find common ground with, and that's the foundation of like what I've been trying to do, for the past 6 years and whatnot, is just trying to find out how we can just unite with each other and just find those common grounds and realize that, we're not going to agree on everything, but we can find things that we do like and appreciate and admire about the other person. And yes, I don't agree with President Obama on a lot of things, but I admire him for his charisma and his ability to be an incredible family man. That kind of ties into, of course, another polar opposite, which would be the Trump administration. I went there to intern at the White House because, first and foremost, to serve the American people. I've applied to work at the current administration right now. Haven't heard back from them, but what I'm saying is, find the purpose of what you're trying to do, and it doesn't necessarily have to reflect who's in charge.
Yep.
Right? I went to the intentions of going to the White House because I wanted to serve the American people on the national stage, and that's where I found the opportunity to do that, and I was blessed to do it. Where every day I'd walk through the gates going into the White House, and I have to go through security, and I have to show them my badge and do all that good stuff to get through. And it's just a humbling opportunity, like to bowl in the Truman Bowling Alley, and to walk into the White House and go to the Rose Garden and watch the president take off in the helicopter. And it's just really incredible. And one of my most fond memories of, tying into the previous point, one of the most fond memories of the my internship was the congressional picnic, and it's where all the Congress comes down, the National Congress comes down there in DC to the South Lawn, and they eat with each other. It's supposed to be nonpartisan. You all just come together and we eat some good food. And there was food there, and it was like a buffet style that day. And I was a volunteer because I was one of the White House interns. So I, of course, 6'2", had some decent sized muscles on me. They're like, "Hey, Brandon, you're going to be carrying this big bucket of chicken." And when I say big bucket of chicken, I'm talking like this huge cast iron bowl with probably 50 pieces of fried chicken in there. So, I pick it up from the main tent, and I'm like weaving through congressmen, weaving through senators from Ohio and Montana and Texas and Florida. And I finally get to the table where I drop it off and I set it down. It's hot outside. It's about, it's humid. It's the summer in DC, and it's hot, and I'm in my, my white dress shirt that I had previously on that day. And I pick up the empty cast iron bucket, which is still probably 15 pounds. And I turn and I bump a lady, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I just bumped some congresswoman from Ohio or something. I don't know. And I turn and I look, and it was Ivanka Trump. And I'm like, oh, what did I just do? Secret Service is about to come tackle me or something. I don't know what's going to happen. And I said, I'm so sorry. I apologize. She says, oh, don't worry about it, honey. Like, thank you so much for she's like saying, thank you so much for, being here and serving and making this a wonderful day. And she, after a conversation, what I realized, because we had more exchange than that, she's just down to earth. She's like a normal person. Yeah, she's got like all these accolades and family business and all that other stuff, but she's a normal, down to earth person. And that's what I learned. The idea of fake news, right? I was very, very skeptical. I thought the fake news was not a thing. I thought it was a political point, to attract people and stuff like that. But being in the White House and seeing what the news stations were saying about what's going on and actually being in there, they were not adding up. I'm like, this fake news stuff sadly is fake. And it's very, very discouraging in that fact. But I realized is the Trumps were actually down to earth people. I met President Trump, came across Eric, and of course bumped into Ivanka, and Melania is amazing as well. And they're just down to earth, good people, at least from my experiences. And that's the thing. I may not agree with everything they do either, but I can admire them. I mean, if you consider that President Trump has raised all of his children, none of them are alcoholics, none of them are drug addicts. They're all, very well disciplined. They all have their different, careers and stuff, and they're very successful. Like whether he's controversial or not, he has done a great job in leading that family and creating successful children. And that's a very difficult thing to do, not just in everyday lives, but especially on the stage that he's been in his almost entire life. And just seeing that aspect of things was pretty cool for me. And again, I don't agree with all of his policies either. Yes, I interned underneath him. It doesn't mean I agreed with everything. But I picked up things about him that I admire and I appreciate, just like I picked up things that I admire and appreciate from President Obama. We need to understand that just because you do not agree with someone doesn't mean you have to cancel them out completely. Society says we have to, but the fact of the matter is we do not.
Yeah.
I think when we come to that understanding of, hey, we can appreciate and admire things about people, even though they may not have the best background or they may not have the best reputation, there are still things we can pick up from that person and apply to our lives to help us be successful.
Yeah. And cancel culture will come it'll come after all of us. I mean, at some point,
absolutely,
we will all have to have to face cancel culture. And I'm hoping that fad, because those who are really promulgating it will have to face it as well.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that that is a fad that goes away. Brandon, this has been really fun. I miss talking to you, and I just have forgotten how smart you were, and I'm just very impressed with you and all of your ideas and what you've overcome, and that God he's been so good to you, and I'm excited like you are to see what God is going to do with your life. And I think it's really cool, again, as your book talks about your path to the presidency. And I would really like that if you won the presidency of the United States, because then I can say that I interviewed him first or second or somewhere in there. I know you speak a lot of places, but to say I know you, that's very selfish and that's a wrong deal. But the beauty of you saying that my ultimate goal is not to be the president, but really leave this place, leave this my culture, my community better than I found it, and make things better and not make things worse. It's just so refreshing, and it's powerful. And so God bless you and Godspeed to whatever you endeavor to do. And before we leave today, I want to give you some final thoughts, and maybe you have something that you want to address or say to the people today that have been listening.
Absolutely. Well, Pastor D, thank you so much for this opportunity to come on here and speak to your incredible audience. What you're doing, not only from a pastoral standpoint, but from a father and husband, I admire greatly. And I appreciate the opportunity to follow you and your family on Facebook and seeing all the cool things you're doing, especially the work you're doing for the kingdom. But the thing I want to leave with your audience is, of course, just focus on being a good person. Things are that are going to work out. They're going to work out. Don't over fret it. And if you are interested in learning more about my book, you can buy it at brandongosselin.com. And one of the cool things is one of my partnering companies is making a $100 donation on your behalf to our scholarship foundation that provides high school students, graduating seniors, with scholarship whenever they graduate. And all they have to do to qualify for the scholarship is pretty simple. They have to write a gratitude letter thanking somebody who's helped them from whenever they were born to wherever they're at in their life now, just saying, hey, thank you so much for investing in my life. And all they have to do is show us that they did that. They put it in the mail, tell us what they wrote about real quick and why that person was important. There's your scholarship. Pretty simple stuff. But yeah, this just remember that you're not there by yourself, and that you have incredible people around you. Sometimes, whether you think it or not, there has been people in your life that's got you to where you are in a positive way. Sometimes it's a negative way, but you are where you are right now because of that. And utilize the opportunity you're in to bring about the most glory to God that you can.
That's amazing. BrandonGosselin.com is where you can order the book. Is it anywhere else or just on BrandonGosselin.com?
I recommend ordering it from BrandonGosselin.com because that way we can track everything
Okay.
and we're able to appropriately donate it. But if you want a Kindle copy, you can get it for 99 cents at Amazon.com.
All right, good book. I recommend it. Really cool. My wife helped edit it, and she did a good job on it. I looked through it to see if I saw any grammar issues, and I'm definitely not the one to be looking at the grammar, but I think it's fantastic. So you can go get the book. I have it right here, and it's a really inspirational book from a very inspirational person, and it'll help you get your thoughts focused and centered so that you can make adequate plans and focus upon the future and be thankful and for the day as well. So we thank him for coming on the show. Just so thankful for all of you that have been listening. Of course, make sure you do this. Like, subscribe, review. You can find us at Grace Talks on Grace Talks Pod. I think it's Grace Talks Podcast on Facebook. Just type in Grace Talks. It'll help you get there. You can find us at Grace Talks on any